The building was supposed to be empty. That was the only reason the night shift paid a little better. I told myself that as I clipped the radio to my belt and stepped inside the warehouse just before midnight, the heavy metal door sealing shut behind me with a dull boom that echoed far longer than it should have. The sound rolled down the corridors, climbed the stairwells, and came back thinner, stretched, almost tired. The place used to be a logistics hub. 5 floors, wide-open interiors, concrete pillars spaced like ribs, ceilings so high your footsteps never really came back to you. They just kept going, dissolving somewhere above your head. The lights were on only where they needed to be, long rows of fluorescent tubes buzzing softly, leaving the rest of the building swallowed by shadow. I'd worked security long enough to know the difference between silence and empty space. This wasn't silence. It was waiting. I started my patrol on the ground floor, following the usual route my supervisor had drilled into me. Check doors, check corners, log the time. My boots tapped against concrete, the sound sharp at first, then warped by distance. Each step came back to me a second later, as if the building needed time to decide whether to answer. I stopped walking. The echo didn't stop right away. It dragged on for half a second more, like something finishing the step for me. I stood still, listening to my own breathing, suddenly too loud inside my head. Old buildings do that, I told myself. Sound bounces. Sound lies. Still, my hand drifted closer to the flashlight clipped to my vest. As I passed the elevator shaft, I slowed down. The doors were open, revealing nothing but darkness and a faint smell of oil and rust. I leaned forward slightly and listened. Nothing moved. No cables humming. No air shifting. Just the quiet pressure of space. I straightened and kept going, forcing myself not to imagine the shaft opening above me, floor by floor, all the way up. The radio crackled once at my hip, just static, no voice, then went silent again. I checked it, tapped it twice, and kept walking. The stairwell door stood open at the far end of the floor. That wasn't unusual. It never closed right. What bothered me was the sound that came next. Metal creaked somewhere above me, not the slow groan of a settling building, but a measured weight shift. Footsteps. 1, 2, 3, heavy and deliberate, echoing down from the floor above. They stopped halfway through the 4th step, like whoever or whatever was walking had realized they were being listened to. I froze. The footsteps froze too. "Hello?" I called out, hating how small my voice sounded as it disappeared upward and came back wrong, flattened, stripped of tone. The echo didn't feel like mine. It felt copied. There was no answer, no movement, just the hum of lights and the distant tick of cooling metal. I told myself it was a bird that had gotten trapped, or a loose panel, or the building contracting as the night cooled. Anything but what my instincts were already whispering. I was the only guard scheduled tonight. I knew that for a fact. I walked back toward the monitor room and checked the cameras. Every screen showed the same thing. Empty hallways, long corridors fading into static, blind corners drowned in black. The upper floors were worse. Grainy, low-light feeds that showed nothing but darkness and the occasional flicker of interference. No movement alerts, no heat signatures, nothing that proved I wasn't alone, and nothing that proved I was. That somehow felt worse. When I stepped back onto the main floor and started walking again, I heard it immediately. Above me. Footsteps, slow and steady, keeping pace. My step, then theirs. Always a fraction late, like an echo that had learned to walk. I slowed down. The sound above slowed too. I stopped completely, heart pounding, muscles locked. The footsteps above paused. Then they took one more step. My chest tightened. breath catching halfway in. I looked up at the ceiling, even though I knew I wouldn't see anything through concrete and steel. Still, I felt it, a tension pressing downward, aware of my position in the open space. The building felt larger now, stretched in ways it hadn't before, shadows pooling deeper between the pillars. I realized I'd unconsciously started counting my steps, trying to predict the sound above me, trying to control it. I hadn't reached the stairs yet, but I already knew I would. That's the rule of night work. You don't leave things unchecked. You don't admit you're afraid. You log the noise, you investigate, and you keep moving. I headed toward the stairwell, the echo of my boots following me like a second presence, and from somewhere above, in the darkness, I couldn't see. Something followed back. Careful now. Patient. Learning exactly how I moved. I stood at the bottom of the stairwell longer than I should have, listening. The concrete steps rose in a tight spiral, disappearing into darkness after the first landing. The overhead light flickered, buzzing louder than the ones on the main floor, as if struggling to stay awake. I put one boot on the first step. The sound came back to me instantly, too instantly. Then, from above, another step answered. Not an echo, a response. I climbed. Slowly, each step I took was followed by another, heavier, somewhere higher up. I tried to tell myself it was just acoustics, the stairwell acting like a tunnel, bouncing my own movement back at me. But the timing was wrong. The sound above waited until I moved, then copied me with a delay that felt thoughtful. When I reached the second floor and stepped out into the open space, the footsteps continued upward instead of stopping. Whoever was above me was still climbing. The second floor was wider than the ground level, stripped almost bare. Rows of pillars vanished into shadow, and the air felt colder, thinner. My flashlight beam cut through dust motes, catching nothing solid. I walked forward. My footsteps echoed behind me now, and ahead of me. I stopped. The sound ahead of me didn't. It took one more step, then another, before settling into silence. My skin prickled. "Security," I said, louder this time. "Identify yourself." The word identify came back wrong, stretched, warped, like someone else was trying to say it, using my voice as a template. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the darkness. Nothing. No movement, no shape. But the feeling didn't fade. If anything, it sharpened, like I'd just stepped into the center of something's attention. The radio crackled. I grabbed it instantly. "Control, this is Night Watch," I said. "I'm hearing movement on the upper floors. Can you confirm anyone else on site?" Only static answered me. But beneath it, barely audible, I heard footsteps. Not through the building, through the radio. I lowered it slowly, heart pounding. I checked the cameras again from a wall-mounted monitor. The feed lagged, then updated. On the second-floor camera, I saw myself standing alone, flashlight in hand. Behind me, several meters back, the darkness seemed thicker, almost textured, like a silhouette that refused to fully resolve. I moved my arm. The figure didn't. Then a second later, it shifted, copying me. I backed away from the screen and nearly tripped over my own feet. The footsteps sounded again, closer now, no longer above me, around me. Every step I took produced two sounds, mine and another that didn't quite belong. I tried to slow my breathing, tried to walk calmly, but panic crept in anyway, tightening my chest. I broke into a run. The footsteps ran with me. They weren't behind anymore. They were beside me, matching my pace perfectly, their echo slamming off the pillars. I skidded to a stop, gasping. The footsteps stopped too, then took one more step, close enough that I felt it through the floor. I turned toward the end of the corridor and saw a shape, standing where the light failed, tall and narrow, unmoving. Relief and terror hit me at the same time. Proof. Something real. I raised the flashlight. Before I could shine it, the camera monitor behind me beeped. On the screen, the hallway in front of me was empty, but directly behind my on-screen self, close enough to touch, something stood perfectly still, waiting for me to realize it was already there. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed at me to face whatever was behind me, to confirm it, to make it real. But something deeper held me in place. I understood it then, not as a thought, but as a certainty. If I turned and saw it clearly, it would finish learning. My radio crackled again, louder this time. A voice came through, distorted, but familiar. My voice. "Night Watch, report your position." I stared at the radio in disbelief. I hadn't pressed the button. The voice repeated itself, calmer now, more confident, practiced. I backed away from the monitor, boots scraping loudly. The footsteps followed instantly. No delay anymore. Whatever had been copying me didn't need to listen first. It already knew. I felt eyes on my back, not burning, not threatening, patient, like I was being evaluated. Memories surfaced without warning. A story I'd heard during training. A guard who vanished years ago during a night shift in this building. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. Cameras showed him walking his route, then simply not appearing on the next feed. Management called it a resignation. Everyone else called it bad luck. No one talked about what replaced him. The monitors flickered. One by one, the camera feeds updated. On every screen, I saw two figures moving through the building. One was me. The other stayed just behind, always half a step late, always in shadow. When I stopped moving, my double kept walking for a second longer. The truth settled in my chest, heavy and cold. The building didn't create echoes, it kept them. I felt my legs move before I decided to run. I headed for the ground floor, lungs burning, flashlight bouncing wildly. The footsteps didn't chase me this time. They walked, calm, certain, ahead of me now, guiding me toward the exit. When I reached the lobby, the front doors stood open, the night air spilling in. A man stepped inside. He wore a security jacket identical to mine, clean and new. His posture was alert, nervous, fresh. He paused, just inside the doorway, eyes adjusting to the light. I tried to shout, to warn him, but my voice came out wrong, flattened, distant, an echo. The man clipped a radio to his belt. Behind him, the doors slid shut. The lights brightened slightly, settling into their usual hum. The monitors behind the desk updated again. I was still there, on every screen, walking my route with practiced precision. I realized with horror that my movements felt easier now. Automatic. The fear had dulled. The building knew me. The new guard took his first step onto the concrete floor. From somewhere deep in the building, another set of footsteps answered, half a second late. I continued my patrol, unseen, unheard, the echo of a man who never finished his shift, listening carefully as something else learned how to wear my steps. When morning came, only one guard walked out of the building. The other stayed, waiting.